I'm going to do the drawing, the lucky winners, very soon. And I'm also going to, on the back of your name tags, you'll see a little tag with a QR code on it. That is to go on a refillable water bottle, and every time you refill your water bottle, you can scan that QR code, and the organization that made the tag is called Fill It Forward. They donate to a nonprofit. So every time you drink water, or Kool-Aid, or whatever you drink, some of us might put Diet Coke in there, you scan that tag and there's a donation for a more likely than not an ecological nonprofit. So does everyone have their, and you do have, I'm sorry, just to go back to that, you do have a little explanation of the Fill It Forward tag in your folders, and there are lots of informational videos on their website as well. All right, the moment we have all been waiting for. For the basket of Survivor books. Now when you win, I expect you to jump up like you're on The Price is Right. That's Let's Make a Deal, you're fine. You just need the matching t-shirts for Price is Right, which we probably could get you with that. All right, 6, 7, 4, 7, 1, 4, 3. That is not like The Price is Right. For the basket with the diffuser and the set of essential oils, 6, 7, 4, 7, 1, 1, 1. Yeah. Yay, Maria Elena. All right, for the oil kit in the big box, that's how I distinguished it on here. 6, 7, 4, 7, 1, 0, 6. And finally, for the Fill It Forward water bottle and bag, because they also do bags that you can scan, the number is 674 7124. Okay, one is not. I promise it was not. Make an arrangement with your roommate. So, I'm glad we've spent these 3 days. There's a lot of levity around a very, difficult topic. So thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for making this conference what it was. It would not obviously be the same without you. So we are so happy to have you. And I am going to invite Maria Elena to come up and do our opening prayer.
Good morning, everyone. So this is a prayer of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. For our Indigenous brothers and sisters. And it's called a Pueblo Indian prayer. It works. Before our white brothers arrived to make us civilized men and women, we didn't have any kind of prison. Because of this, we had no delinquents. We had no locks nor keys, and therefore among us there were no thieves. When someone was so poor that he couldn't afford a horse, a tent, or a blanket, he would, in that case, receive it all as a gift. We were too uncivilized to give a great importance to private property. We didn't know any kind of money, and consequently, the value of a human being was not determined by his or her wealth. We had no written laws laid down, no lawyers, no politicians. Therefore, we were not able to cheat or swindle one another. We were really in bad shape before the white men arrived, and I don't know how to explain how we were able to manage without these fundamental things that, so they tell us, are so necessary for a civilized society. By John Fire Lake Deer, South Dakota, 1903 to 1976. O Great Spirit who dwells in the sky, lead us to the path of peace and understanding. Let us live together as brothers and sisters. Our lives are so short here, walking upon Mother Earth's surface. Let our eyes be open to all the blessings you have given us. Please hear our prayers, O Great Spirit. Prayer for peace, Native American prayer.
Thank you, Maria Elena. All right, we have our first keynote panel, Cyber Safety and the Dirty Dozen, with our speakers Russ Tuttle and Lina Nealon. Russ comes to us from, I have here. He is the president and founder of the Stop Trafficking Project. Russ uses his strengths of communication, leadership, team development, and compassion to combat the crisis of domestic minor sex trafficking. Russ is an active member of several coalitions and task forces in Kansas and Missouri. The vision of the Stop Trafficking Project is to end domestic minor sex trafficking before it starts by disrupting the exploitation of the vulnerable. It is from this vision that the Be Alert strategy was developed. The primary method of implementation of the Be Alert strategy is through presentations designed to educate and empower students and guide adults from awareness to action. A commitment to collaborate with trusted people and organizations has impacted the lives of over 160,000 people, of whom over 70,000 are students. The Be Alert strategy has proven impact in a variety of settings. Russ grew up for much of his childhood and teenage years in India. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. This created within him the drive to serve those who are unable to help themselves. Russ brings over 3 decades of passion and experience in the not-for-profit world to the Stop Trafficking Project team and is the primary communicator of the vision and mission. Lina Nealon is committed to promoting the dignity of every human being and creating a society where everyone can reach their full potential. As the National Center on Sexual Exploitation's Director of Corporate and Strategic Initiatives, she spearheads and co-sees campaigns to hold corporations accountable for profiting from sexual exploitation. As founding director of Demand Abolition, Lina designed and led the first national program combating the demand for paid sex that drives the global sex industry. Under her leadership, Demand Abolition coalesced a vastly diverse network of survivors, movement leaders, and allies across sectors and disciplines to implement tactics to stop sex buyers, disrupt commercial sex markets, and transform cultural norms around buying sex. Lina was the leading architect of the Cities Empowered Against Sexual Exploitation, a collaboration between 12 major U.S. cities, measurably decreasing demand in their communities, and a founder co-chair of the World Without Exploitation Coalition. As a sexual assault survivor, Ms. Nealon is driven to elevate survivor leadership and promote women's and girls' empowerment. As a policy specialist and trainer with the Institute for Inclusive Security, Lina ensured women's significant representation in peace processes and reconstruction efforts across dozens of post-conflict countries. Lina and her husband, Brian, are raising 4 young, adventurous, nature-loving, socially conscious activists in Durham, North Carolina. Russ and Lina, welcome.
If this was your friend and you knocked on the door and they greeted you like this, most of you in the room would be like, what is wrong with you? You have just lost your mind. Oh, hey, I wonder who's at the door. Oh, look, it's my buddy Russ, but he looks really small and kind of oblong shaped. What's wrong with him? Okay, so half the door is glass. All he has to do is look to the door and go, oh, that's my friend Russ. This is an image I like to use around this concept of online safety, cybersecurity, the crisis of domestic minor sex trafficking with our kids, because most of us, the problem is this, not just specifically in this room, but those that we're working with, most people have a very limited perspective of what this issue is. And this entire conference has been designed to give us big window perspective of bigger issues that we really need to do a deep dive into so that we can actually help kids be safe. The challenge is this, is that so much of the exploitation of kids is happening online. This setting here is kind of a normal setting for me. We're actually now closing in on 80,000 students and over 170,000 people that we've done these presentations to. And so let me give you a little insight into this. And just, I'm going to throw a little bit of a trigger warning out there this morning. So anytime if I'm saying something, because I'm going to tell you some pretty difficult stories, if you just need to walk out, that's totally fine. Don't offend me one bit. But I got recently done doing a school assembly, and it was for middle schoolers. And a 6th grade girl walked up to me at the end of the assembly, and she had tears in her eyes, and she slowly removed 4 little choker chains around her neck, and I could still see the hand imprint around her neck of the choke marks around her neck, where her 8th grade boyfriend had choked her out the day before the school assembly. The 8th grade boyfriend had stumbled into a porn addiction when he was in 2nd grade.
Yours is waist up? Okay, cool.
And this has now become normalized behavior for him, and so now he thinks that this is what females want. My little 6th grade friend hasn't even gone through puberty yet. She's a little stick. And tears in her eyes, she tells me that this has happened. As if that wasn't bad enough. This 8th grade boy had used this amazing device to record what he had done to her in less than 24 hours as we do the deep dive trying to figure out how we're now going to help this young girl. Come to find out that this young boy in 8th grade had taken those pictures and videos he had recorded of choking her to the point where she passed out while he is having sex with her. 8th grade boy and 6th grade girl in a rural Missouri school, almost 3 dozen mostly adult men were negotiating with an 8th grade boy to purchase the 6th grade girl. This is sex trafficking. You see, the problem is when we go to the farm door, most people have that big window perspective. No, they don't. They have very limited perspective. We need to provide them a big window perspective. And this is the false narrative that we must crush. Sex trafficking is a creepy vehicle pulls up and abducts someone, kidnaps a kid off the street and takes them to a warehouse somewhere and ties them up, and they're having horrific things happening to them. The reality is this, the images that you see here, we have to get our society to get away from this perspective. And in our organization, we don't even use the words prostitute and prostitution. Because you call someone that, you've just identified who they are, not what has happened to them. And as you hear our dear sister survivor stories, so often the abuse happens so young. And so our passion in our organization, the Stop Trafficking Project, as a nonprofit, is we develop this strategy called the Be Alert strategy to help people understand there are ways that we need to keep students safer. And 100% of the students that we work with, all of their exploitations start online. And so if you want to almost oversimplify this thing, for us in our organization, in our lane, to end it before it starts, I am big on staying in our lane. Every once in a while, I got to turn the blinker on, and I got to step into some advocacy work, and I get right back in my lane to end it before it starts. Sometimes I got to work really closely with law enforcement, but I get right back in our lane. Sometimes we got to go help out with a sexual assault nurse examiner situation, and then I get right back in my lane because this is not our lane. Our lane is help end it before it starts. And here's the challenge. I want to propose to you that sex trafficking in America is not about the creepy vehicle. And I want to say it's not about abduction in our lane to end it before it starts. This is the reality. This is the creepy new vehicle. And it's not about abduction. It's about seduction if we're going to end it before it starts. And so the reality that comes down to this, all the issues that our kids are facing online, is so in our organization, our focus is not to come in and say, all right, everybody get your phones out, get on your Twitter account, I'm going to show you how to be safe. Let's examine TikTok and show you how all the bad things are happening on there. By the way, regarding TikTok, this is my opinion, but I'm right. TikTok's probably the most dangerous apps out there right now for kids being exploited. And I'm saying that from anecdotal experience with over 80,000 students who we talk to and do surveys with to find out what's happening in their lives. I have kids telling me on TikTok that they're learning how to die by suicide. I have kids telling me on TikTok this is where they're going to learn the latest self-harm techniques. So brief overview of my last 3 weeks in school assemblies and in community presentations. In the last 3 weeks, I've had 28 kids come to me at the end of an assembly say, I've already written my suicide note, I was going to die by suicide. But your assembly has given me some new hope. Here's what's happening. 85% were girls, the rest boys. 100% of them, the reason they wanted to die by suicide because they'd all taken naked pictures of themselves and had sent them to people hoping to get attention. Oh, they got attention all right. You see, in the world of cybercrime safety, I don't want to focus so much on how you stay safe online. That's not what I want to focus on today. Because here's the reality. You can use technology on your technology to keep you safer from technology. It's amazing. There's all these fantastic groups out there and apps that we can use. The challenge is too many adults have this very narrow perspective and say, once I put that Bark app on my kid's phone, it's all good, I'm done. And the big window perspective is we have to give them insight into the realities of what's actually happening with our students. You see, in our organization, I boil everything down to 3 words. If in our organization, if it doesn't fit these 3 words, I say no. You can take this complex issue and boil it down to the exploitation of vulnerability. So how do we back out of this in our lane to end it before it starts? We've got to identify the vulnerabilities in our kids before they can be exploited and understand the role that life online plays in this. See, the good thing is this technology itself is not the enemy. But technology is creating tremendous complexities in the lives of our families, and in our parishes, and in our schools. And so, they tell me that this iPhone has enough technology to launch a rocket ship to the moon and bring it back. Now, I have no clue how that works, okay? I have no clue how that works. I can barely use it as a telephone. All this amazing technology, launch a rocket ship to the moon and bring it back. Or, hey. So I'm with students all the time. And so generally speaking, they've got these amazing devices. And generally speaking, the fellas, okay, they're photobombing each other. They're punching each other. They're giving each other wet willies. And they're having a good time. The ladies, whole different ballgame. Okay, so typically starts here. You got this little pose. Okay, and what's missing for the ladies, generally speaking, especially elementary and middle school girls and high school girls? What's missing? Pucker lips. Okay? And then they're doing this, and so here's the secret. It's never down here, down low, right? It's always up here, up above, and it's because they say every inch takes 3 pounds off. I don't know. So they're doing all this, and so 374 pictures later, our young girls finally find the one picture that they like, and then here's the tragedy. Then they post it, but not until they run through some apps. You know what's happening? Too many of our students, their actual self-worth and self-identity is based on how many likes and shares they get. Let me tell you who loves this. Let me tell you who loves this. Perverts, predators, and pimps. Because perverts, predators, and pimps are preying, and I'm not talking about the kind of prayer we just had. They're preying on our kids when they are online. So what are the real issues that we deal with? How do we keep this innocent child who's also in fear from becoming this highly sexualized case that tragically in our American culture today we have normalized pornography? We've normalized this hypersexualization of our kids starting at the youngest ages. Therefore, they tell us the average age of first-time exposure to pornography in America is between the ages of 8 to 11. And according to Pornhub's own statistics, in 2021, the number one search for category is hentai porn, which is animation. You got an innocent child, and that's the first thing they see. Well, guess who loves that? Perverts, predators, and pimps. So what are the real issues? What are the issues that's actually happening? What's driving these things with our kids? To help us understand that this actually is the new creepy vehicle we need to pay attention to in our lane and our organization to end it before it starts, to make sure that we're keeping kids safer. It's not about abduction, it's about seduction. Of what are we going to do? Because here's the thing. This current generation in our schools, kindergarten to 12th grade, has been identified as the loneliest generation ever. And yet they're the most connected. And so the fear, how do we get this little girl or little boy from going to this to becoming a person who can be exploited? Well, online when they're lonely and they don't talk to a trusted adult, it's not that difficult for a pervert, predator, pimp to infiltrate their life. We've got kids who are lonely and isolated, and I'm not just talking about isolation from COVID. Just last week, I got down to the school assembly. A 7th grade boy walked up to me, and he said, "I just want to die." "What's going on, buddy?" "I just don't fit in." "You have any friends?" He names like 23 friends. "Okay. Are you in activities?" "Yeah, kind of." "What are you doing?" "I play football, I play soccer, I'm in band, I'm in theater." "Okay. What's your home life like?" "My mom and dad have been married 18 years. Brother, sister, dog." Right, so all the check the box things, none of it fit. But he felt isolated, didn't fit in for whatever reason. Come to find out, somebody says something about him online that kind of triggered something in him, and all of a sudden now I'm not fitting with my friends. Our kids that feel isolated, they're lonely, they're isolated, they're depressed. We're seeing levels of depression amongst our students today that are reaching skyrocketing levels to the point to where kids are dying by suicide. Therefore, all the kids just in the last 3 weeks have come up to me and just openly said, "I want to die by suicide." I got done doing a school assembly, and a 7th grade girl walked up to me, and honestly, this is one of those assemblies that was a tough one. I was there for an hour and a half afterwards, kids coming and telling me their stories of exploitation, one after the other after the other. And I kept noticing this one girl, she was always the last one in line. And she came up, and you know how you just kind of reach your limit and you're almost done, right? And I was that close. Like, I needed a break. And this girl says, "Hey, you like my sweatshirt?" And I'm like, "Fantastic, here's my break." She was wearing a really cool hoodie. I said, "Yeah, I like a hoodie a lot." And then, with no expression change on her face, she said, "Well, my best friend just gave it to me, but she's dead. She died last week by suicide, and we just buried her on Saturday." This is Tuesday morning. On Monday, a package arrived in the mail to my new 7th grade friend from the girl who died by suicide the week before, buried on Saturday. In the package is the sweatshirt that she's wearing and a letter, a handwritten letter. And in the handwritten letter, from the girl who died by suicide, buried on Saturday, to my new friend is page after page after page after page of handwritten page of vulnerabilities being exploited. And see, we got our kids doing this. Let's go to the farm door. I know what I'm doing. I'm in 7th grade. And the big window perspective is when our kids don't have any adult supervision and we're not paying attention to what they're doing online, the whole cyber safety concept. I don't need us as adults to be experts in technology. I need us to be experts in our kids and understand the vulnerabilities that they're facing and realize and understand and make the connection of this is how the world online is working. We better have enough knowledge about that to say, here's how I'm going to keep my kids safer. Let me unpack this little girl's story through the farm door. I know what I'm doing. I'm in 7th grade. Met this amazing person online. When I'm sad and lonely and depressed, he talks me off the cliff. It's great. He's sending me pictures. Pretty sure he's a 14-year-old boy. Big window perspective is this little girl in 7th grade was talking to an adult male predator in his early 60s. The pattern's always the same. In vulnerabilities of kids being exploited when it starts online, they almost always will show them pornography. And then because of this amazing relationship, I need you to send me a hot pic. And typically, especially when it's girls, but boys as well, the reaction is, no, I don't want to do that. But then they feel pressure because the issues of cyberbullying and controlling relationships that are also happening online come to grip on our kids. And so she finally gave in. She sent the picture, and he couldn't stand it. Got to meet you in person. So she's enamored, and so they meet in person. And he does unthinkable things to her within minutes. And he used this amazing device that can launch a rocket ship to the moon and bring it back, or record that. And he began advertising, and she's writing page after page after page to her friend in this letter. And her letter started with, we've always been best friends. In fact, we've been besties since kindergarten. And I know you like this sweatshirt. And I wanted to buy it for you because I don't want you to ever forget me because I'm going to die by suicide. Here's how. These are 2 7th grade girls. My new friend is standing there in the auditorium, and she, you know how people sometimes reach a point where you're just weeping so hard, your entire being is involved in just the grief, and she couldn't even speak anymore. She just kind of thrust the letter at me, and these are the words that I read that she pointed at me. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry, but I've given your name to the people online as another girl who's probably willing to take her clothes off and send naked pictures too. And I watched a little girl in 7th grade in a middle school auditorium. I watched her entire demeanor go from sorrow, from her fear to for her friend to absolute fear now. Because it's just about those 3 words, about the exploitation of vulnerability. And technology itself is not the enemy, but technology is creating tremendous complexities in the lives of so many. One of my dear friends, Amy, was a trafficking victim when she was 12 till 3 weeks before 18th birthday. And, my dear friend died on Father's Day Sunday morning in 2021 from all the years of abuse. She was on her 5th attempt to get out of life, and it was amazing because Amy came alongside us for so many years and gave us insight on how to help students and how to process all these things. And a lot of things that we do in school assemblies when we go talk to students. When Amy was still alive, we never used her name, but we protected her identity as she gave key insights and aspects of what she wanted to accomplish. And in the last 10 days before Amy passed away, I met with Amy so many times, multiple times, because she looked me in the eye and she did me a favor and she did a horrible thing to me at the same time. She grabbed my hand and she looked me in the eye and she said, Russ Tuttle, don't you ever quit telling my story. I hope you understand, in this work, you should not tell a victim survivor story because it's not your story to tell. Unless there's that rare moment that person says, tell my story. And even then, you better make sure you tell that story with absolute integrity to protect and to serve. And Amy passed that legacy on. And so in honor of Amy, we go into schools and we identify these vulnerabilities. And what I want you to see on the screen is we have this misunderstanding of the kind of things that happens to kids online. But what I want you to understand, every word on that screen, in the professional world of trafficking, pimps and traffickers are running algorithms online. You talk about cyber safety. They're running algorithms online looking for kids, putting up words like I feel broken or hopeless or unwanted or things like this in the various ways that they can then infiltrate their lives. And so in honor of Amy, we really enjoy going into schools and providing hope. And I want you to know there's hope as well. And we found, I think, kind of a unique way to approach this. And so what we do, we come into a community the night before, and we want to pull together members of a school community, starting first with law enforcement, and then other first responders. We pull together then any counselors in the area around that school, other medical professionals. We're pulling in members of the faith community, school leaders, and of course parents, adults, grandparents, foster parents, everybody. And we want to put them all on the same page, right? We want to get them away from this far door image and go big window perspective. The next day we actually provide age-appropriate school presentations that's really more of an experience. Kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And there's one story that ties it all together. And you heard in the introduction that I grew up in India, and so when I was in India, a disgusting experience had happened to me. By the way, if you're eating breakfast, you might want to stop, because I was drinking a cola product in India, and I ended up with a dead cockroach in my mouth. So this is the fun foundational story that we go tell in school assemblies, because I promise you, kids are done today with, all right, students, set your profiles on private, be safe online, here's what you need to do, you need to tell your mom and dad, they're like, shut up. Like, we've been hearing this for 15 years, you're so out of date and antiquated, right? Makes no sense. So we found kind of a unique way to approach this whole issue, so we do it around this true story. So, listen, when I'm in schools, I unpack what it's like to have a dead cockroach in your mouth, okay? So y'all are professionals here, so I would never want to do that, especially early in the morning. But just a little bit of insight into what it's like to have a dead cockroach in your mouth. The Indian cockroaches, the back shell is really hard, and so when I swallowed it, there was enough liquid in my mouth that it was actually lodged in my throat. It was stuck there, and it wasn't moving. Y'all are professionals, and I would never want to gross you out, especially this early on a Friday morning after a long conference. But if you were students, I would talk about how the underbelly of the cockroach is really soft and squishy because of all the excrement and things that are there, and how my tongue kept touching on that. I would never want to gross you guys out with that this morning, because that's just pushing the envelope too far. But we have so much fun with students, because you know what we do? Here's the thing. I want to get away from the far door. These kids these days. I can't believe these kids these days and what they're doing online. Oh, see, the big window of perspective is we as adults are the ones who created all this technology. We're the ones of adults who have maybe created lazy babysitting, and here's a screen. We as adults are the ones who have created, okay, well, just go ahead and you do your thing, because I'm going to do my thing online. And we're actually allowing strangers into our homes through our devices. And so, I don't have time, obviously, this morning to unpack the age-appropriate nature of what we do with our school assemblies, but it ends with this. The kids make a declaration. Not in my life. I'm not falling for this stuff. And they go, not in my school, because I'm going to watch out for my friends. You see, Amy's story gives kids permission to not say, who am I going to get in trouble if I say something? Amy gives them permission to say, who am I going to keep safer by doing the right thing? And in honor of Amy, they step forward. They yell, not in my life, not in my school, not in my future. We help students understand your online life, cyber world is only going to get more complicated the further you go into life. See, here's the thing. Why am I telling a cola cockroach story? So the cola represents a kid's online life. A little bit is okay, too much is bad. I think you all know too much soda pop in your life is not good for you. We tell that with kids. Age-appropriate kindergarten through 12th grade means different things. The cockroach for the little kids represents anything that makes me feel unsafe. And we've unpacked that for all their school assemblies. Clear on through our older students, the cockroach is maybe pornography. The cockroach might be I feel lonely and isolated, so I'm going to talk to somebody online instead of talking to a trusted adult. And by the way, today we have to define a trusted adult. It's not someone just with a title. The school I was at in Monday and Tuesday this week, booming metropolis of Missouri. I pulled into the town, sign says population 578. You know you're in rural when there's no Dollar General around. You know why they had me come? Because one of their teachers, popular coach, 29-year-old, tall, dark, handsome stud, the most popular teacher in the school, the football coach, was recruiting kids online in the school, having sex with them, arrested last April. You want to talk about some sober school assemblies? But we came to appeal to hero kids and to bring them hope. So the message is, hey, colon cockroach. So they stand up and make this declaration. And it looks something like this. So if we've got the sound on the video, we'll show this video. So that's the booming metropolis of Hoisington, Kansas. Anybody here know where Hoisington, Kansas is? I didn't either. Thank goodness for technology. See, technology's not the enemy. A girl came to me at this assembly, and this is literally what she said. Here's my cell phone. There's a cockroach in my life. The very next day, this guy was arrested in jail on $1.3 million bond. You know why? Because when you tell kids the truth, there's this principle: the truth sets you free. And you tell kids the truth, and they step up. And you're using a goofy cockroach story that we use in our organization to give kids the ability and the opportunity to tell the truth. Because one girl came forward, this was in the newspaper article, the next day they had 4 cases. Within 8 months, there were up to 14 kids that this guy was sexually assaulting, all from the same school. He was a product of that school district, kindergarten through 12th grade, lived as an adult 3/4 of a mile from the school. I'm not judging or nothing, but he's posing as a super cute 14-year-old boy online. Welcome to 7th and 8th grade in Hannibal, Missouri. We got done with the school assembly and we ended up with 3 boys on federal level child porn charges because they got a message from Sarah online. Sarah wanted revenge pictures of one of the little girls in the auditorium, so they used their cell phones and they took upskirt pictures of this little girl and they sent them to her and said, if you don't show us more, we're going to make you famous in the whole school. The girl did not go to a trusted adult. The 3 7th grade boys kept sending the pictures to Sarah. It reached federal level child porn charges. This little girl, her life was destroyed, so scared. Here's the problem. Here's your big window of the farm door. Sarah was actually the Boy Scout troop leader, adult male, of the 3 7th grade boys. He's in federal prison. One of the 3 boys died by suicide 3 months later because of pressure. A few months ago, this person was arrested. 30-year Missouri juvenile officer indicted on sex trafficking charges. He is the dad of the adult male Boy Scout troop leader who was having the 3 7th grade boys take upskirt pictures of... We need to be trusted adults for our kids, and it's not based on a title. We love going talking to littles. Here's a group of 1st, 2nd, 3rd graders. This is my favorite kids to talk to. This is so much fun. So, I don't know what it is about littles. Do your littles fall down when they throw up at home? I have no clue. I have hundreds of these videos because 80,000 kids. I have all these videos. I have entire elementary schools like it's where I went bowling and I just do a strike and the whole school goes and they just fall in, right? But but we're motivating them, giving a message. The last video I want to show you today is St. James Academy in Lenox, Kansas. You're gonna enjoy this one. These students were all about it. They were having a great time. They owned it, and this is the desire to start young and maintain that level of enthusiasm all the way up through older students. There's one kid in the front row in particular. I thought this kid was going to give himself a hernia. Like, he's so into this. Like, he's... See, this is what happens when you tell kids the truth. You appeal to the hero in them. We're not mad at kids. It's about 3 words. It's about the exploitation of vulnerability. And guess what? There's nowhere where they're more vulnerable than when they're online. So what are we going to do as adults? Really, really quickly. We're not going to live in fear. We're going to live wise. See, when we go into communities and I have full time to do the presentation, most adults, they want to walk out and they want to go home and they want to burn the house down. Or at least the technology, right? That's not the answer, because technology's here to stay. It's how the world works. Here's the thing. We got to make sure we don't overreact, but that we also don't underreact when we're working with our kiddos. When I'm with parents, I actually have them raise their right hand, and I say, I promise to be my kid's parent first, not their best friend. Too many parents are trying to be their kids' best friends. We got to knock that off, especially in the world of technology. We also must never think or say, not my kid. That's the most tragic mistake most adults make. The other thing we got to pay attention to as adults, we got to lead by example in our own lives. There's a generational gap a lot of times depending on our age, but we still must lead by example. And then really, really practical things that we can do is to develop a plan and be consistent on our website. So what I've done is in the middle of the table, I've given you a whole bunch of information. There's a half sheet of information here with a lot of stuff on there. We've got a bookmark that gives all kinds of information there, the front and the back. The business card is there. And these little plastic things, this is not candy, don't put it in your mouth. I actually had an ER nurse put it in her mouth 3 weeks ago. I'm like, what the thunder's wrong with you? ER nurse, must have been off a long shift. So this is a webcam cover, so it's got a little window. You open it, there's double sticky tape on the back. Center it over your camera, open and close it. It's a great resource. But on our website, there's over 100 pages of free resources. Let me just stop and do the most simple thing. If you have a kid that you care about, and the adult in their life, if they don't have a cell phone contract between that adult and that kid, there's a simple cell phone contract on our website. Start there. It's so simple. The other thing I want you to do is understand this. You got to start young. Because it's so much easier to teach than unteach, especially with our world online, because now you're going to have to pick your battle as they get older. You got a 16-year-old you want to get rid of on TikTok, guess what? You just start with World War III. But every World War was won one battle at a time. So pick your battle, know your kid. You are only as safe as your stupidest friend online. So I had a girl come up to me recently, and she said, I just want you to know, Mr. Tuttle, that I am super safe online. And it was cool. I said, well, congratulations. How safe are you? And so we start talking, and so I have 29,000 friends online. 10th grade girl. Okay, you mean followers? No, I mean friends. Okay, let's talk about that. And so it was a cry for help. I said, let's talk about who are the friends. I knew the pattern. The pattern was the same. Found one person who really drew her in, sent pornography. She starts taking her clothes off, sending videos, sending pictures. He's amazing. He's awesome. He wants to meet me in person. In fact, Mr. Tuttle, I think I'm going to go meet him. Where does he live? He lives in Morocco. I said, sweetheart, do you know where Morocco is? Yes, Illinois. Okay, sweetheart, Morocco's in North Africa. And all the color went out of her face. Not mad at her. Appealing to the hero and kids. We want to end it before it starts. Lastly, apply those 3 words: exploitation of vulnerability. And finally, we're working to encourage adults and organizations to be active, learning, empowered, relentless. And here's the thing: you are not in this alone, and don't let your kids be in this alone. We must do this together. Here's the thing: we put so much pressure and responsibility on our kids and on our adults to be safe online. The reality is this: that's part of it. But Lina's going to talk to you now about the reality. But we have to force corporations, and we have to force the hand of big tech to help us as adults and help us as parents to be able to keep our kids safer, because this is where so much of the exploitation of vulnerability is happening. And so Lina's going to talk to us about that.
everybody. So today I was looking at the saints of the day, and it happens to be St. Jude, patron saint of hopeless causes, desperate cases. I thought, wow, what a perfect saint day to be talking, because so often this feels hopeless, right? I listen to Russ, the work I do, and like, how are we going to change things? And but these children, they don't want this. They don't want this, and they're up against impossible odds. And not all students, not all children have a Russ in their life to teach them what to do online, and oftentimes they are left on their own to try to protect themselves on these platforms. Parents, even the most educated, engaged parent feels overwhelmed in trying to manage all the technology and understand the systems. I've been in the anti-exploitation field for 15 years. I started at Cozy 2 years ago. I had no idea that human trafficking was happening on Instagram and pornography was being sent on Snapchat. So we have to hold corporations accountable for creating safe products, because again, those kids who don't have, not everyone has the privilege of involved and engaged parents, right? And those are often the kids who are most vulnerable to sexual exploitation and abuse. So it feels hopeless, but I get hope from Russ, I get hope from the Catholic sisters. You guys are fearless, fierce advocates and have helped us create change. And I want to leave you with some hope that change is possible, because we are seeing it happen. So I'm with the National Center on Exploitation. We exist to build a world where people can live and love without sexual abuse and exploitation. We defend human dignity, oppose sexual exploitation, and expose all the connections, because they are all, as Russ mentioned and Peter mentioned, and I think Christian and Kylie also mentioned, it is all so interconnected. So we are confronting child sex abuse material, which is the term for child pornography that advocates are using to really indicate the harm. Pornography, again, as Russ shared, anyone with a cell phone is a pornographer now, and it's a largely unregulated industry. We see that sex traffickers post the rape and the trafficking on pornography to diversify their portfolios. Sugar dating is a form of prostitution. Sexting, 40% of kids 9 to 17 think it's normal to send nude images. Even scarier, 9 to 12-year-olds, 50% have sent a nude image to somebody. And out of those kids, 25% sent it to someone that they didn't know in person and believed to be, 50% sent it to someone they didn't know in real life, 25% thought that they were an adult. So again, it's all interlinked, so we attack it from all angles and all issue areas. We have 3 main objectives: to dismantle the infrastructure of the pornography industry and make pornography intolerable. Again, as I said, largely unregulated industry. Right now, there's no requirement for age and consent verification for people in pornography. So we know that it's rife with child sex abuse material, sex trafficking, image-based abuse, which is when pornography is taken without someone's consent, like upskirting, or someone's in a relationship and then a partner posts that to pornography sites. So we really believe that this is also at the core of tackling demand, because those in pornography are also suffering extreme trauma similar to those in prostitution. The viewer, the user of pornography suffers, and of course is creating demand, and some we call pornography the training ground for prostitution, and of course society at large suffers. Demand reduction is a core objective of ours too. We also support the equality model, or we call it the abolitionist model. There are way too many names, but what Christian and Kylie were presenting, we also are advocating for. And then creating safe online spaces, again, because so much exploitation is happening online. It doesn't mean that we're not also tackling exploitation of adults online, but we are really honing in on child safety, because those children also end up growing up to be adults. So really quickly how we work. Policy advocacy team, we work at the federal and state level, so we are pushing for pushing against full decriminalization movements, and then supporting the equality model at the state level, also passing legislation to hold corporations accountable. We have a strong research team. We train law enforcement primarily around demand reduction and helping them understand why they need to prioritize sex buyers. Advocacy, which we'll talk about, and litigation. We have a law center that does pro bono work. We're the ones that are currently suing Twitter for knowingly hosting child sex abuse material. A young man was tricked, thought he was sending images to a young girl. Turned out it was a trafficker. He was 13 years old. 3 years later, he found out because his classmates saw a compilation of his rape and abuse on Twitter, started making fun of him. He was suicidal, and the parents finally caught on to what was happening. He was 16 at the time, contacted Twitter and said, "This is me, I was 13. Twitter came back saying, "We're no violation." And it wasn't until a federal agent got involved did Twitter take it down, but in the meantime, had 106,000 views, and of course, that is how Twitter is profiting. So our case is the first to get out of the Ninth Circuit District Court into discovery for a case like this. We're also suing several of the biggest pornography companies. We led the first class action lawsuit against Pornhub. So corporate advocacy is what I do. Why corporations? I don't have to go into this, but because they have such enormous influence and power politically, economically, socially, and culturally. And while they give us a lot of good products, many of them, products you and I use every day, credit card in your pocket, where you're buying art supplies, they are also facilitating sexual abuse and exploitation, either because of lack of good policies or not implementing their policies, inherently bad platform or product design, or just providing the infrastructure for abusive corporations like Pornhub, or simply turning a blind eye to protect their bottom line. So we really feel like, again, hitting corporations that often can make change much quicker than our legislative or judicial systems is the strategic way to go. We work with all industries, but this is how we really bucket the ones that we work with most. I would also add the education system and educational technology. We've had some really incredible, horrifying findings of what products are teaching, what education products are exposing our children to, including hardcore pornography. And so we've had some campaigns geared towards ed tech as well. So the way we do this, first, the way that we determine which corporations we're going to target, a lot of times it's survivors who are coming to us and saying, I was abused at this hotel, or the staff knew, or I was sold through Snapchat. So we get a lot of survivor input. We work with law enforcement and allies like Russ, who are also telling us what they're hearing and seeing from the people, the kids that they work with. And then we do our own investigation. So I'm acting like a sleuth. I pretend like I'm a 13, 14, 15-year-old on most of the social media sites. And I really don't have to look hard. A lot of times I just go on to see what's coming at me when I'm not even looking for it. I don't want to mess with the algorithms. It is not hard. When I signed up as a 13-year-old for Instagram, the first person who was recommended to me by Instagram was a 40-year-old male. I looked him up, and he was on a whole bunch of sugar dating sites. Sugar dating sites, sugar daddy sites are prostitution sites. So he was very likely a sex buyer. And here Instagram is coming to me, recommending me as this is the first person I should befriend. So we do the sleuthing, and then we decide which corporations we're going to go really target with our work. And a lot of times, I am the department. I am the corporate department. So we have to see, who can we influence and who will have potential industry-wide impact. So we do, we target Visa and MasterCard because Visa has 50% of the credit card market share, right? If Visa changes, we're going to do, the rest of the companies are going to be watching. When Google changes, the world takes notice. So we do decide, when we're targeting a certain company, what are the ripple effects and how many people will they affect? And also just to educate the public, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we do direct advocacy. I am meeting with Google, Apple, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, almost on an every other month basis, and really educating them. It is shocking how little they know or understand, for example, the harms of pornography, right? They know it's happening, but they don't understand what, they're looking through the peephole, right? Like they think that they know what it is. And we have to educate them, and so we have brought survivors of pornography, that were pornography performers, survivors of pornography to meet with MasterCard to talk to them about the realities of the pornography industry. We will bring survivors of human trafficking, girls do porn, trafficking ring. The leader is a top FBI most wanted. Girls Do Porn was a verified channel on Pornhub. That means they had a partnership. So we brought Girls Do Porn survivors to meet with Google and tell them what it's done to their life, that someone can search their name and Google search will pop up the images of their abuse and trauma. So whenever we can, we do bring survivors to educate them, and then I also advise on platform development. So I was part of the Apple, part of consulting with Apple on their they created some updates to their parental control. So they came to me to better understand the harms of pornography so that they would know at what level to set some of their defaults for parents. And then we educate influencers. So I work a lot with policymakers. I bring them the evidence I collect. We always, take screenshots and collect evidence, like for due diligence, right? But also, these big companies do like to try to sue us. So we always make sure that we have the proof, and we actually post it on our website. You can go to our Target pages, you'll see proof. We heavily, edited and blurred out, and we don't put the worst up there. But we wanted people to understand this is not us making things up. We have been accused of that. And so I'll bring that evidence to policymakers. I'll walk them through and show them how easily an adult can contact me on Snapchat, for example. So there were several hearings last year, congressional hearings. I was working with the staff of the Congress people, the senators, to then interrogate TikTok and YouTube and Snapchat when they were, and Instagram when they were brought in front of Congress. And then media, we target shareholders, not as much as I would like. I'd love the sisters to get more involved with this. We have even bought shares in companies, so we bought shares in Verizon, and then said, we're coming to the shareholders meeting, and we're gonna tell them that you're streaming child sex abuse material, and very quickly they took us to another room and said, okay, we'll make some changes. And so they made pornography opt-in at Verizon. Sometimes when I can't get a hold of companies, I will go to their shareholders and be like, did you know that Wish is selling child sex abuse dolls? And very quickly then I'll hear, literally sometimes within hours, I'll hear from a company representative saying, yes, we want to talk. And then public campaigns, which I think is what most people know us for. We have many different campaigns. Dirty Dozenless is the one everyone knows. I'll talk more about that, but we do want to applaud the corporations that are doing good work. So Bumble is in, so this is our Dignity Defense Award. We try to do it almost every month. Bumble is a dating app. It's a woman-led company, and the women on the app are getting so sick of being sent unsolicited pictures of genitals that Bumble said, we're going to proactively blur any sexually explicit content, right? So if you're on Bumble, you're dating, you're not gonna see those disgusting pictures. This is the only company I know that is doing this. Why isn't Snapchat? Why isn't TikTok? Why isn't Instagram? The technology exists. They just don't want to do it. So here, adult women are being protected, but our children are not, by a company that is infinitely smaller than all these other tech companies. So, and they're also helping pass legislation to stop cyber flashing. That's what they're calling it. So, no flashing, but cyber flashing. So they're getting active in advocacy. So we want to elevate them, and then we basically go to other corporations, like I just did with Snapchat. I was like, Bumble's doing it, what's your excuse? And then we have some campaigns that are around industries. We had Fly Free around trying to get airlines to stop, not allow pornography even on personal devices on planes, and also training airline attendants on how to deal if somebody is watching pornography. So United, we threatened to put them on our Dirty Dozenless annual campaign. We always send a notification letter a week before. They came and said, please don't put us on your list. What do you want us to do? Said, you need to make a policy that you're not going to no R-rated movies on your planes, and pornography is not allowed. And you have to train all of your staff and how to deal with it, because the staff are even saying it feels like an unsafe environment, and we get sexually harassed when men are watching pornography. So they did, and we took them off literally the day before we were going to publicly launch our Dirty Dozen list. So again, it works. 50 Shades of Abuse, you probably all know that book. We usually don't advocate for boycotts. And I know we were talking about the Immokalee Coalition. I was actually part of the first year Notre Dame got Taco Bell kicked out. I was part of that group many years ago. We usually don't call for boycotts just because we think being proactive is more powerful, and with some of these corporations, we really would have to have a critical mass of people. But in cases like this, where we knew a boycott would make sales plummet, we did advocate for a boycott. Dismantle Pornhub is another big campaign. So we were going after the infrastructure. So our law center is suing them. Our public advocacy team is working with legislators in Canada on hearings. We're working with media, working with allies. And we're like, okay, so who's propping up Pornhub? So Pornhub is the second largest pornography company in the world. With X videos, they get more views than Amazon and Netflix on a monthly basis. And tons of, again, child sex abuse material. Brave survivors were coming forward saying, my rape, as a 13, 14, 15-year-old is on Pornhub. They refuse to take it down. So I hope you all were following this. In early 2020, we went to Visa and MasterCard and said, you need to cut ties with these the porn companies, and again, show them all the proof. And then the journalists caught on. Christoph wrote a huge article. But we were seeing that there were still companies like advertisers. And so Visa and MasterCard finally cut ties after this big New York Times article came out in 2020. But there were still advertisers, right? That's how these companies make money, including social media, is the other companies want ads. So we decided to go after, for example, Diesel, that was noted as a top 10 advertiser on Pornhub. We went after Instagram, that had a verified Pornhub channel. So again, Instagram, widely used by many children. They have their verified channel, which means it said Instagram approves of this channel. I could access it again as a 13-year-old, and there would be things like next career goal, and would have kind of blogs and podcasts encouraging people to become pornography performers. So we pushed on Instagram, and they actually last month booted Pornhub off of their platform. Pornhub created another account. So we went to Instagram and said, Pornhub created another account, that's against your policy, because if you get booted, you can't create another account. And Pornhub was so dumb that they were bragging about the fact that they were back on Instagram. So we, again, called Instagram, got our activists sending letters, and now Pornhub is banned again. So that's the type of the infrastructure. Who are the Roku's, another one that's streaming Pornhub. So they banned Pornhub from Roku. So who are the companies, the mainstream companies that we all use that are buttressing these industries? So Dirty Dozen List is our annual campaign. It's been going on since 2013. Really to galvanize the public to push on these companies to make change. Also, it's to educate the public. So a lot of people think this is like the top 12 list. It's not a top 12 list. It's not a list that we're constantly, if you're on 1 year and you do good work, you're bumped off. It really is a bit more of a public awareness campaign, and we approach it saying, okay, what are various issues that we want to raise? We want to make sure that we have some diversity in industries to target. And where do we think we might be able to have an impact? So sometimes you can look at this and be like, wow, really? You're going to put Meta and Etsy on the same list? But we wanted Etsy because they were selling dolls that look like children, sex dolls, right? So child sex abuse dolls were being sold on Etsy. There were multiple comments where people would just post pictures of their genitals. There was image-based sexual abuse. So again, it was Sellers on Etsy were taking images of celebrities and turning them into pornography. So again, this issue of image-based sexual abuse, we've tried to elevate a bit more. And it's also because it's Etsy. Like, who would think that Etsy is selling child sex abuse dolls and pornography? And I think a lot of parents and caregivers think like, oh, it's safe. And we were hearing from parents saying like, my child was on Etsy and saw hardcore pornography. So we're like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, we need to elevate the fact that Etsy is doing this. And we also were like, hopefully Etsy, it's also misogynistic apparel, hoping that Etsy would make a change because it's just really doesn't seem like it should be part of their model. Meta, we put on, again, it's like, duh, everybody knows Meta is horrible, but we put Meta on this year because of their move toward, you've probably heard of the metaverse. It's this move toward virtual reality. It's like a mix of social media, virtual reality, banking, and they were under fire for knowingly harming, their own research was showing that their products were harming young people, that it was decreasing self-esteem, like, again, pushing people towards suicide and eating disorders. And instead of addressing that, they released this new rebrand. And part of it was their virtual reality platform, Horizon Worlds. And when they released this, with much fanfare, there was a psychologist who studies virtual reality who was gang raped in the virtual world. Now, there's still a lot of research needs to be done. Those who have experienced sexual assault through virtual reality, and we know from brain science, neurologists, that you have the same physical, mental, and emotional effects if you're raped in virtual reality as if it happened to you in the physical world, and can be even augmented because it's augmented reality. And the same thing was happening to children, even though they weren't supposed to be on there, they were on there in droves. And so after there was like this big buzz, they finally put like a personal boundary around, like you could put a personal boundary where people couldn't come and touch you on the virtual reality. But why did it take, this people already being traumatized for them to figure it out? And literally in the Washington Post, a response to this issue and about child safety, they said, oh, we're figuring it out as we go along. It's the literal quote, right? So they aren't prioritizing child protection. So we wanted to elevate Meta and others. And the past 2 years, we've really focused again, especially during COVID, that many of these companies were seeing record profits while at the same time child online exploitation on their very platforms was skyrocketing, right? So they had the money and even more money. Meantime, kids are being exploited and they are literally doing nothing to further the protections. So, and then we also wanted, again, this image-based sexual abuse is a new concept that is coming up. It's not a new crime, it's just we haven't had language around it. So we also wanted to elevate the platforms that are really perpetuating image-based sexual abuse, like Reddit, which is a very popular platform. You might ask, like, why isn't Snapchat on there? Why isn't TikTok on there? They've been on there in the past and we've had success with them, but sometimes we don't put them on the Dirty Dozen list either because we feel like they're getting enough attention from media, for example, and there's a lot of pressure, and because we're working with them and we give them like a grace period. And we say, listen, we're not gonna stop calling you out. We might not necessarily put you on the list. We'll still put out press releases and whatever, but we're gonna give you a grace period if we feel like they really are trying to intentionally move forward with better policies. So this is last year's list. It's not, so we do about like half and half, like we'll leave 6 from the year prior and then add 6 more. We've had a lot of victories. Already running out of time. I'm just going to go through some quick to show. So in terms of leisure, victim hotels knew that there was human trafficking going on. It was very clear evidence of a young girl, men coming in and out of her room. So we put them on the Dirty Dozen list, and we sued Wyndham for knowingly facilitating sex trafficking. The maps I put on there because their general manager was sending harassing texts to a journalist, and the owner of the Mets fired him. So we wanted to applaud them. So they got the Dignity Defense Award for taking action and not allowing the normalization of sexual abuse and harassment to continue. Back to the hotels, we led a big campaign. It was also on Hilton Hotels was on the Dirty Dozen list for on-demand pornography, and we were hearing from survivors that pimps and sex buyers would put on the on-demand pornography in their rooms and say, do this. And then of course families, kids, I remember seeing pornography at the hotel, just scrolling through the TV. So we got Hilton to no longer stream on demand, or offer on demand, and then Hyatt followed. And then Intercontinental followed. So now you really don't find on-demand pornography at hotels, and a survivor told us afterwards, this, finally I feel like someone cares about me. That no one at the hotel seemed to care, the general public didn't know. So yeah, we do it for the survivors. Retail, I talked about Etsy and Wish. Look at this photo right here of a young girl. She's sitting it's clearly a hotel room. She's sitting on a chair. Her feet don't even pass the chair. I mean, this is a human trafficking image, right? And this is what they're selling, saying have sex. Wish also used to sell spy cams and would advertise. Wish is like a really big, it's like a competitor to Etsy. It's like one of the biggest retail sites. Would sell spy cams and with imagery of upskirting. So they would literally say, buy these spy cameras to film women non-consensually. So they finally took that off. And this was one case where the shareholders, I went to, I think it was Vanguard, it was one of their shareholders. I was like, did you know this is happening? And within 12 hours, I heard back from Wish, and they no longer sell the spy cams. And it's also drastically reduced. It's much harder to find the sex dolls anymore. Transportation, I think Terry Coonan talked about Uber and Lyft, that they're often the ones transporting sex buyers. And it took a law case for them to also update their policies. They also allow sexual assault happening by Uber and Lyft drivers. So they have actually one of the best transparency policies that we've seen. So we apply them for that. They still have a lot of work to do and need to implement by setting an industry standard in terms of transparency. DoorDash, Instacart, during the pandemic, pimps were pushing their victims into the gig economy. And again, so survivors came to us and said, we're being made to do Instagram and DoorDash. So we reached out to Instagram and DoorDash, and they created an awareness campaign and tried to link up with organizations that were doing survivor exit services. Talk a lot about these guys. So one of the things that we will do, again, we put pressure on, we'll say MasterCard did this, Visa, why can't you? So the most recent one is, we're now, we said, hey MasterCard, there's also a lawsuit against Xvideos that's doing the same things as Pornhub. You cut ties with Pornhub, why are you still processing for Xvideos? So we were going to have a meeting, and within a week, I saw that MasterCard wasn't being accepted on Xvideos anymore. So I had to double check, so I call Xvideos. It's like, hey, my MasterCard's not going through for the premium. They're like, yeah, we're having some issues. Use your Visa card instead. I was like, yes, I couldn't have scripted that better. So then we put out a press release saying, Xvideos says, use your Visa card. And we sent Visa a letter saying, hey, you guys are the only credit card processing for Xvideos right now. So we're still waiting to hear back from them. You can sign our petition to get Visa to cut ties. Am I out of time? All right, over. MasterCard, we worked with them on rules, saying that anyone in pornography should be able to verify age and consent. And then technology, the big one, of course, and I'm leaving it to last. So much influence that they have. Google search, for example, if you put in happy black teen, it would come up with only pornography. If you put in, and finally they stopped that. If you look up girls do porn, this is that verified trafficking case, or forced sex porn, rape porn, would yield only pages and pages of pornography. we put them Google search specifically on our Dirty Dozen list, and they have now changed a lot of this. So if you put in forced porn, at least it bumps it to the 8th page, which for Google search is really important. The first page, second page are the most important. So we'd still like them to completely remove it, but at least now you get articles and resources rather than more pornography. And then, of course, just the exploitation of children. I won't go into this. I think we can share slides just showing where young people are. You're not even supposed to be on social media unless you're 13. But we know scores of kids younger are on social media. And what we are trying to do, similar to what I was saying, and this is Chris McKenna, Protecting Eyes, amazing organization, such a great resource for parents. We're trying to flip it, right? Children right now they have the least ability to make changes, but they are right now, all the burden is on them. And we need to flip that to put it on policymakers and on big tech to be pushing forward products that are safe by design. And not just products made for kids, all products, right? It's like with the car industry. Before, we didn't, you get a car, you wouldn't have a seatbelt, airbag, etc. Well, right now, big tech is giving our children cars with the airbags and seatbelt and brakes out, in a bag outside the car, saying, if you want to put it in, go ahead and pay us $30 and we'll do it. So again, these are just some examples of what I see. This is Snapchat. They always talk about how it's age-curated material. This is what I see as a 13-year-old on their Discover section. And we know, Instagram, Meta. We started our advocacy with Instagram when young survivors were telling us this is what's happening to us, and nobody seems to be listening. So one of my favorite victories, and I'll probably end on that, go to questions. So I started with Cozy 2 years ago, so it was during the pandemic. I have 4 children, and 3 weeks after I started Cozy, I got 3 school-issued Chromebooks. And in the meantime, I was getting calls from parents saying, my children have accessed hardcore pornography on their school-issued Chromebook. I know someone who works in the Chicago public school system. A teacher said, I had a child who was accessed by a predator through Roblox at school on a school-issued Chromebook. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. The schools are giving it to my kids. Aren't they safe? No. So during the pandemic, Google was sending out Chromebooks to literally every child in the world. Nothing turned on. No safety features turned on. When they very easily could have just probably flipped a switch and put on all of the safety measures. So that was Chromebooks is my center target this year. We went after them, spent a lot of time, petitions, et cetera, going to Chromebooks saying, please just turn it on. They were making 40 Chromebooks just for education in 2021. 40, just for kids. We're just at least on those. So finally they did, turn them on us now for K through 12 all around the world. Chromebooks that go to schools and to kids' hands, all of these safety settings are turned on and only administrators can turn them off. You can read about some of the other victories we've had, but it's changed. We've had about 125 major policy changes since 2013 that really has shifted the industry, and that's part of the corporate work, our law center suing the corporations, and our legislative policy. So I did also want to elevate in terms of action, because I know the sisters, you guys are always so great at doing the advocacy, and a lot of you have partnered with Cozy. There's 3 pieces of legislation that is holding big tech accountable, that would really make significant changes for kids. So the first is Kids Online Safety Act, COSA. It would do what Google did. It would compel companies to turn on all the safety defaults, or all the safety by default. So if a child is creating an account, it would turn it, they would be set to privacy, the highest privacy setting, limit access to adults. It would also compel more parental controls, because yes, while the corporations need to make these safe, we also do need to give parents whatever tools possible to protect their kids during their online digital journey. CAPA raises the age from 13 to 18. Like, nowhere else do we treat kids at 13 as adults, but we do on the online world. And we send them into this place where we would never send them if it was brick and mortar. And then eliminating abusive and rampant neglect of Interactive Technologies Act, known as the EARN IT Act, would hold tech companies civilly liable for knowingly hosting child sex abuse materials. So right now they have, by and large, they have immunity for hosting child sex abuse material. So this would amend, you might have heard of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. This would amend it slightly, very targeted for child sex abuse material. So please act. The Dirty Dozen list in all of our campaigns would make it very easy for people to email, to sign petitions directly to the companies. We know it works because they've told us. Google literally told us that they made this change because of the Cozy and the Cozy supporters. Same with Hilton, same with TikTok, all of them, they really truly do listen. You are the customer, you are the shareholder. You also have power to change those corporations, and we try to make it as easy as possible for you to let your voice be heard. Also want to advertise, we have a summit coming up. We had 20,000 people from 109 countries in 2020, about 15,000 last year. Incredible resources, it's free on every topic on that spectrum of sexual abuse and exploitation. And please do always feel free to contact me. I would love to hear the experiences that you're hearing about, that you're seeing with those that you work with, or ideas of companies you'd like us to explore more and hold accountable for the harms that they're facilitating, and hopefully move them towards protecting dignity over profit. Q&A?
Probably just like, yeah. I think so. I'm just waiting. But I love them away.
Come on. Yeah, David.
This is good. Okay, cool. Thank you both very much for your wonderful presentations. This question, I think, is directed toward Lina, as somebody who uses Netflix for things like The Two Popes and Call the Midwife, as a nod to our Anglican sisters. So, what is it about Netflix that gets it on the Dirty Dozen list multiple years in a row? It's hard for me to imagine as something that's curated by Netflix rather than kind of third parties, what that's about. So, thanks.
Yeah, so Netflix. So first, you probably maybe remember the Cuties, show of hands. Do you remember the Cuties, Libby? Basically, the intention was very good. It was to show what young girls, it was set in France, but what the sexualization of young girls through social media, but through the movie, they actually sexualized young girls. They were very young actresses. They were very provocative. Some people even felt that it would have and could have, by federal U.S. definition, fallen under child sex abuse material. So there were a lot of boycotts and petitions. We of course pushed on it, and it's on there. Like it's been 2 years. And in addition to that, they have added a lot of other. It's first of all filled with gratuitous sexual nudity and very violent sexual scenes. There was a researcher that said it should be called sex flicks, because out of the top 12, we analyzed the top 12 most popular titles, and there were like 1,500 like sexual scenes, many of them violent. There's also a show called Big Mouth that insinuated like child-on-child sexual abuse as well as incest, kind of glamorizing it. 365 Days, another movie where it's basically someone is kidnapped and tortured, and then she falls in love, and it's like this Cinderella story, but also again very violent sex scenes. So it's again where it's a spectrum, right? I mean, again, like Kick, which is popular with kids, like I've had to file multiple reports of child sex abuse material on Kick. It is a cesspool of predators. Is it the same as Netflix? No, but Netflix is still part of perpetuating that culture of hypersexualization of children, violence against women, and it is shaping our culture. And so we want to call it out they could be doing better, right? Again, we didn't call for a boycott. I do still have Netflix. Other of our supporters were like, yeah, we're done. Like we're cutting it off. But we did feel like we wanted to elevate because we just from cuties on saw this slew of even worse. I have to tell you, a pornography producer who actually called me asking for help to figure out how to take down a sex trafficking ring on VR chat, which is a virtual reality, made this side comment like, oh yeah, cuties is like a pedophile's dream, right? This is coming from a pornography producer. So my long-winded answer to Netflix, but we do get a lot of questions about Netflix and why it's still on there.
Leanne, I'm guessing I might know the answer to this question. Under shareholders, I assume you're connected with ICCR, which is where... Not yet. Oh.
We're getting there.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, because, yeah, I mean, that's where there's usually a connection with most sisters' investments.
Yeah, so
yeah. And not just sisters, but Catholic Healthcare.
Right. And other big denominations, right? Yeah, they've been on my list, and it's, I hate to admit it, I mean, it's been like just literally a bandwidth issue. We do need to get much better about reaching out to shareholders, because I do think that that's where so much of the influence can be. And in terms of the ESG funding, environmental, social governance, I think we've seen a lot of progress in terms of the labor trafficking. These issues are not present. So I do feel like the faith communities and ICCR would be the best avenue to elevate these issues of sexual abuse and exploitation, with trafficking as part of ESG funding. And my dream is to start shifting that a bit more and even targeting the mutual funds. But yes, absolutely, it's a great idea, and you're reinvigorating my commitment to getting together with them. Or even, again, like proxy statements and things like that. I do think that that's crucial in this fight.
Thank you for your presentation. I just want to share an experience that when people get educated about the social thing, I read it one time that like the Uber driver in New York noticed that they pick up somebody that's unusual, and so what the driver did is call the police and kind of have it, and it so happened being a sex trafficking area. And that's the reason, like, the more we give education to people, and the people become very alert. If they notice even on the plane, it's an old person and a young one that doesn't seem to be related, and the person feels conscious about it, call the police so that when they come up, they were able. There's a lot of cases, success cases of that whole thing of people being alert of what to look at. And then at the same time too, the FBI monitored people who go to pornography sites. There's a lot of pornography sites. I served in a federal grand jury in Oklahoma, so we had a lot of contact with FBI that time. They were telling us that they monitor, if a person access the pornography site more than 3 times, they will follow that person. And that's one way they go on to this whole pornography thing. And the other experience I have about this whole thing is sometimes when a person is being reported as missing, it's very dangerous because we had a case in that thing that the family report missing. By the time that girl, but there's already somebody who we have a place for you and things like that. It takes almost 3 days before the parents was able to do and search for that little girl because it's already been in a group. That right away they know, they are very clear and that who to pick up missing and things like that. Those are sometimes it's not a good time to tell a missing person, especially teenagers or something like that whole thing.
Thanks so much for your presentations. And Lina, welcome to St. Louis. It's good to see you here. Can you comment on the city's initiative that you have, and what cities are included, and what is your strategy?
So sadly, that initiative is over. This was when I was leading the program called Demand Abolition. And so it was active for about 3 or 4 years, but the foundation that was managing that has kind of sunsetted. However, what I can tell you, I can tell you what cities they're in, and I can also tell you that a lot of them have continued to focus on ending demand, and that was our whole goal, was to integrate it and to change the systems to, we worked very closely with the mayor's office, the district attorneys, law enforcement, and then we had very strong requirements in each of the cities. They had to apply that there was strong survivor leadership, and the survivors were part of the core team. You needed law enforcement, and you needed survivors, and you needed some, like a DA. So we were in, if I remember, we were in Seattle, Portland, Oakland, Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, Denver, Chicago, Atlanta, Boston. I'm missing 2. But for example, in Texas, they just passed a law saying that first-time sex buying is a felony, right? They said, you are buying a human being, that is serious enough to be a felony. In many places, buying a human being is the equivalent of a parking ticket. And that law was in part at the initiative of the group that had been part of the Cease Coalition in Houston and Dallas, moving. And I think that they did a lot of work to educate the community around these issues and sex buying. I know in Boston, for example, which is where I lived when at the time, the mayor convened businesses and said, I want to create a business alliance to combat sex, or to combat demand. I mean, it wasn't even such a saying combat demand, and you have to have policies in your corporation saying your employees will not purchase sex. And so they were helping people understand the link between demand and prostitution and sex trafficking. And that was very bold, because a lot of people don't want to talk about demand. They do not want to hold sex buyers accountable, sadly in large part because a lot of politicians and other influencers and policymakers and even law enforcement, unfortunately, are buyers. So this was a very brave initiative, and it's still ongoing. So these corporations, train their employees and the links between sex buying. So those are some of the things, but again, sadly, it's not active, but we know there are a lot of communities right now who are really taking it seriously. There's a big task force in North Carolina, for example, focused on demand reduction. So I'm happy to tell you, you can reach out to me, I'm happy to connect you.
Also, one more is, what is being done to train judges?
Not enough. I mean, Peter, I don't know if Peter mentioned that, I mean, he's been training judges. It's hard because even when you convince police to go after the sex buyers, you have to then convince the prosecutors, and you have to convince the judges. And I think a lot of attention has been put to law enforcement necessarily, and you train law enforcement too. There are a few groups that have been trying to train prosecutors and judges, but I would love to see more at the association level, so like the National Districts of Attorneys, or through the National Attorneys General Council, something like that, I'll use the acronym NAG. So there are a few groups that are training, but again, not enough. Or they're training on human trafficking, but exclude the demand aspect of it.
No, that's already
Thank you both so much. I have 2 questions, one for each of you. Russ, I'm wondering if you could speak to what's your process after these students are disclosing this information to you. You shared obviously there have been some successful arrests of the perpetrators. So yeah, kind of how do you go about either engaging parents of these children, school administrators, law enforcement, after the children are sharing this information with you? And Lina, the Earn It Act in particular is one that U.S. Catholic Sisters Against Human Trafficking have been strong supporters of. Just any updates or information you can give about kind of where things stand. I know it's kind of stalled in this most current Congress. Thanks.
Yeah, so part of our strategy starts before, part of the strategy starts before we go to the students where we pull all the adults together to educate and empower them. Because here's the thing, I think you understand the system up here is broken. So I was at a school last week in Springfield, Missouri that hotlined a girl who was being trafficked 77 times over 6 months before there was even a knock on the door. So the system up here is broken. So just like all politics has to come local, if we're actually going to help kids, it's got to come local. So when we go into communities, that's why we pull together all the elements within a community. It doesn't matter if it's ultra rural, suburb, or inner city. We pull together the law enforcement and the other first responders, medical counselors, because it's going to have to come local to actually help those kids. Well, we do 6th grade through 12th grade, we actually survey the students, and they are telling us, and the results are on that half sheet of paper that's on your table. How many of you are meeting complete strangers in person, you first met online? Are you active in saying news? What's your involvement with pornography? We then pay victim survivors to process that material. And these are victim survivors who are in a place healthy emotionally, that the surveys don't trigger them. And so they rejoice when a kid has a healthy survey, and they are sad when a kid is saying, I'm doing these things. We send that data back to the schools directly and give them insight into this. These are the vulnerabilities of the students that you're processing. And then we provide a whole bunch of helps with them based on that specific data. So it's kind of, I can't necessarily answer your question exactly, but there's all the helps that are there based on the surveys for that particular community. When kids disclose, we're working with everything depending on where we're at regionally. Obviously, first and foremost, every single time is law enforcement. If we start local, if the school is blessed with the school resource officer, they're the first. If they don't have any training, we go to the next level, and a lot of times we're ending up going to state patrol. And a lot of times when we get that, then we have to maybe look federal. But we try to keep everything as local as possible to make sure that they actually have training. And then with the parents, that's why it's important to have the counselors there ahead of time, because the whole family's going to need counseling, and make sure that those medical people, because when we have, it shows on your sheet the number of actual, just victims of actual crime of domestic minor sex trafficking who have been identified just through doing these school presentations. So the health and the providing the care for them has to be long-term and ongoing. So our goal is immediate impact with the presentation, and then we have long-term influence strategies for that community after our team is gone, so it continues. The follow-up system gets pretty intensive. It's very administratively heavy because a lot of emails and connections, but make sure that that kid is okay and following up on those stories.
Earn it, sadly, it passed bipartisan through judicial, like I think it's 22-0, right? It took broad bipartisan support. The tech industry has a lot of money, and the lobbyists are really pushing. If you Google Earn It Act, you find almost nothing positive. That is not a mistake. So sadly, I don't think it's going to be passed this session. It's going to be reintroduced, possibly even with a new name. But good news is that COSA COPPA, which Nicosia also really endorses, we think it has a pretty high chance of being included in this omnibus bill. Also, a lot of bipartisan support. I was speaking with some people at first night. I mean, this issue, thank goodness, it's like so refreshing to see broad, the Republicans and Democrats really, I think, are just finally, we're all done with big tech's lack of accountability, right? Like not just in this space, but widely. I think we are in a moment of time right now where I do think we're going to see change and legislative change leading to regulatory change. So I'm hopeful that at least those two bills will pass, and that we'll see Earn It Act pass after the next session.
I sort of feel like the Grim Reaper lurking to end session. What a wonderful, wonderful panel. Thank you, Russ and Lina. You did such a All right, with that in mind, we are going to scamper on to our next set of, or actually our final set of breakout sessions this morning from 10:15 to 11:15. And then we will come back here for an exciting and dynamic closing. No pressure. So, breakout sessions. We are going to do familial trafficking with Alicia Cohen. I believe that was supposed to be in the St. Moritz room, but it is being moved to the burn room. And then trauma-informed care will be in here with Dr. Williamson. And providing direct service to survivors of human trafficking will be with Chris Wade in the Alpine 1 room. So go forth, enjoy your next breakout session, and then come on back at 11:15.